The old warship floated in the darkness of space, its metal hull scarred from many battles. The words HFY stood out in bold white letters against the dark gray surface. Once, the Defiant had been the pride of the human fleet. Now, it was just an old ship waiting to be retired. Captain Jack Miller stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared at the stars. At 58, he had spent most of his life in space. His hair had turned gray, and lines marked his face. This would be his final mission before he, like his ship, would retire. "Captain, we're approaching Outpost Horizon," said Lieutenant Anna Reed from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. Miller nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Prepare for docking." Outpost Horizon was small, just a few buildings on a rocky moon far from Earth. It was a quiet post, perfect for an old ship on its final mission. The Defiant's job was simple: show the flag, remind the colonists that Earth still protected them, then head home for decommissioning. "Docking complete, Captain," Reed reported a few minutes later. "Good. I'll be in my quarters. Let me know when the station commander comes aboard." Miller left the bridge, walking slowly through the corridors of his ship. The Defiant had been built 30 years ago, when humans first encountered the alien races known as the Crimson Empire and the Nova Collective. Both alien groups had been at war with each other for centuries before humans entered space. Now, they both saw humans as a threat. Miller reached his quarters and sat heavily at his desk. On the wall hung pictures from his long career, younger versions of himself standing proudly before various ships. The Defiant was his fourth command, and his last. A beeping sound from his computer interrupted his thoughts. It was Tom Wilson, his tactical officer. "Captain, you need to see this," Wilson said, his face serious on the screen. "What is it?" Miller asked. "Long-range sensors have picked up unusual activity. Both Crimson and Nova ships are moving in this direction." Miller frowned. "Both? That's not possible. They never operate in the same sector. I've checked the readings 3 times, sir. They're definitely both coming. I'll be right there." Miller stood up quickly. In 30 years of space service, he had never heard of the Crimson Empire and Nova Collective working together. They hated each other more than they hated humans. Back on the bridge, Miller saw the sensor readings for himself. Wilson was right. 2 fleets, one with the red ships of the Crimson Empire and one with the organic-looking vessels of the Nova Collective, were moving toward Outpost Horizon. "How long until they arrive?" Miller asked. 3 hours, maybe less," Wilson replied. Miller turned to Communications Officer Peter Black. "Contact Earth Command immediately. Tell them we have both alien forces approaching us." Black's fingers flew over his console. After a moment, his face paled. "Sir, I can't reach Earth Command. Something's blocking our long-range communications." "Keep trying," Miller ordered. He turned to his first officer, Commander Ben Roberts. "What's the status of Outpost Horizon?" Roberts checked his screen. "Population of 1,500 civilians, minimal defenses. They're mainly a research station." Miller's mind raced. The Defiant was old but still had weapons. However, it was just one ship against 2 alien fleets. They couldn't win a fight, but they could buy time. "Alert the station. Begin evacuation procedures immediately," Miller ordered. "All non-essential personnel from the outpost will board the Defiant. We'll try to get them to safety." The next 2 hours were chaos. Station personnel and civilians rushed to board the Defiant. Children cried, parents looked worried, and Miller's crew worked to fit everyone aboard a ship never designed to carry so many. "Captain, alien fleets now 1 hour out," Wilson reported. Miller nodded. "Status of the evacuation?" "We've got about 1,200 people aboard," Roberts said. "The rest are still coming." "We need more time," Miller muttered. Then an idea came to him. "Wilson, what about the asteroid field in Sector 7? Wilson checked his data. "It's dense, sir. Dangerous to navigate." But possible. Yes, sir. Barely. Miller smiled for the first time that day. Prep for emergency disconnect from the station. As soon as the last civilian is aboard, we make for the asteroid field. Sir. Roberts looked confused. The Defiant is old, Commander, but she knows a few tricks. We'll hide in the asteroids, then slip away while the alien fleets search for us. 20 minutes later, the last civilians boarded. The Defiant detached from Outpost Horizon and accelerated away just as the first alien ships appeared at the edge of the system. They've seen us, Wilson reported. 5 Crimson destroyers breaking off to pursue. Full power to engines, Miller ordered. Head straight for the asteroid field. The Defiant shuddered as it pushed to its maximum speed. Behind them, the red ships of the Crimson Empire gained ground. They're charging weapons, Wilson shouted. Evasive maneuvers, Miller commanded. The first shots from the alien ships flashed past the Defiant. One hit struck the rear shields, making the lights flicker. Shields at 80%, reported engineer Susan Reed from her station. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a dense cluster of rocks ranging from car size to larger than the Defiant itself. Entering the field now, announced Anna Reed, her hand steady on the controls despite the danger. The Defiant dove into the asteroid field, weaving between the massive rocks. The Crimson ships followed but more cautiously. They're falling behind, Wilson noted. Miller smiled grimly. Good. Now for the trick. He turned to Reed. Find us a big one. Reed guided the ship deeper into the field until they reached an asteroid almost twice the size of the Defiant. Perfect. Bring us in close and cut main engines, Miller ordered. The ship drifted next to the huge rock, using just maneuvering thrusters to maintain position. Now what, sir? Roberts asked. Now we wait, Miller said. Wilson, what are the Crimson ships doing? Still searching the edge of the field. They're being careful. Miller nodded. And the rest of the alien fleets? They've reached Outpost Horizon. They're destroying it. Sir. The bridge fell silent as everyone processed this information. Outpost Horizon had been evacuated, but it was still a human settlement, now being erased. Sir, Reed said after a moment, what's our plan? We can't fight them all. No, we can't, Miller agreed. But we can escape. Once night falls on this side of the asteroid, we'll power up just enough to drift away from the field on the opposite side from the alien fleets. Then we'll make a run for the nearest jump point. And then? Roberts asked. Then we warn Earth, Miller said firmly. Something big is happening. The Crimson Empire and Nova Collective working together. That's never happened before. Whatever they're planning, it can't be good for humanity. As the Defiant hid in the shadow of the asteroid, Captain Miller looked around at his crew and the frightened civilians crowded onto his bridge. His old ship had one final mission, it seemed. Not a ceremonial patrol, but perhaps the most important journey of his career. The fate of Earth might depend on this aging warship and her determined crew. 2 days had passed since the Defiant escaped the asteroid field. The ship drifted through empty space, running on minimal power. Inside, the corridors were dim, lit only by emergency lights to conserve energy. In the engine room, Engineer Susan Reed worked tirelessly. Her hands were black with grease as she reconnected wires under a console. The hit they had taken from the Crimson ships had done more damage than they first thought. How's it coming, Reed? Asked Captain Miller as he entered the engine room. Susan wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a dark smudge. Not good, sir. Communications are completely fried. We can't send or receive any messages. Miller frowned. Without communications, they couldn't warn Earth about the alliance between their enemies. What about the engines? Main drive is at 40%. We can move, but not fast or far. She hesitated. There's something else, Captain. The damage caused a small radiation leak in the power core. I've contained it, but our energy signature is now very distinctive. If any alien ships scan this sector, They'll find us immediately. Miller rubbed his chin, thinking. Can you fix it? Susan shook her head. Not without parts we don't have. Then we need another solution. Miller looked around the engine room at the old machinery. The Defiant was outdated, but sometimes old technology had advantages. What if we don't hide our energy signature, but change it instead? Susan's eyes widened. You mean make us look like something else? Exactly. Could you make us appear as debris? Just another piece of space junk. A slow smile spread across her face. Actually, I might be able to do better than that. With the right adjustments, I could make our power emissions mimic a small asteroid with trace mineral deposits. Nothing worth investigating. Do it, Miller ordered. How long? 6 hours, maybe less. Miller nodded. Get it done. I'll be on the bridge. As Miller made his way through the crowded corridors, he nodded to the civilians huddled in every available space. The Defiant had never been meant to carry so many people. Food and water were being rationed, and tensions were high. On the bridge, Lieutenant Tom Wilson stood at the tactical station, watching the long-range sensors. Any sign of pursuit? Miller asked. Wilson shook his head. Nothing close, but I've detected something strange about 8 hours away at our current speed. He pointed to a blip on his screen. It's a massive energy reading, coming from a point in empty space. No planets, no stations, nothing should be there. Could it be a ship? Too big, sir. Much too big. Miller studied the readings. Set course for it. But keep us at a safe distance when we arrive. Sir, Wilson looked surprised. Shouldn't we be heading for the nearest jump point to Earth? With communications down, we'd just be running blindly, Miller said. We need to find out what the Crimson Empire and Nova Collective are planning. That energy reading might give us answers. 8 hours later, the Defiant approached the coordinates, running on minimal power with Susan Reed's modifications making it appear as nothing more than a mineral-rich rock. What they found left everyone on the bridge speechless. Floating in space was an enormous construction, half-built but already larger than any space station humans had ever created. Around it swarmed ships from both alien factions, working together. What is that thing? Whispered Commander Roberts. Tom Wilson ran scans, his face growing paler by the minute. It appears to be some kind of weapon platform, but the power readings are off the charts. Can you determine its purpose? Miller asked. Wilson worked his console for several minutes. Not precisely, sir, but based on its position and the energy patterns, I think it's designed to harness and focus energy on a massive scale. A weapon to use against Earth, Roberts suggested. Wilson shook his head. I don't think so. The position doesn't make sense for that. He looked up at Miller. Sir, I think they're building a device to tear open space itself. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. You mean a wormhole generator? Miller finally asked. Yes, sir. And based on the calculations I'm seeing, they could create a direct path to Earth's solar system, bypassing all our defenses. Miller stared at the massive structure. Now he understood why the two enemy factions had joined forces. Alone, neither could overcome Earth's defenses, but together with this device, they could strike directly at the heart of human territory. We need to get closer, Miller decided. Find out more about that platform. Sir, that's extremely risky, Roberts protested. There are dozens of enemy ships out there. I'm aware of the risk, Commander. But right now, we're the only ones who know about this threat. We need more information if we're going to stop it. Miller turned to Anna Reed at the navigation console. Lieutenant, plot us a course that will look like natural asteroid drift. Take us close enough to get detailed scans, but keep us looking like space debris. Yes, sir, she replied, already working on the calculations. For the next 12 hours, the Defiant slowly drifted closer to the alien construction. The ship's sensors gathered data while the crew and civilians remained in near total silence, afraid that even the sound of their voices might somehow be detected. Tom Wilson worked nonstop, analyzing the information as it came in. Finally, he called Miller over to his station. "I found something, Captain. A fundamental weakness in their joint operation." Miller leaned in to see the display. "Show me." The Crimson Empire and Nova Collective use completely different technologies. They've had to create interface systems to work together. Wilson pointed to several spots on the schematic of the platform. These junction points where their systems meet are inherently unstable. A targeted strike at any of these points would cause a cascade failure. "Good work," Miller said, clapping Wilson on the shoulder. "Now we just need to figure out how one damaged old ship can attack a heavily guarded alien weapon platform." As if in answer to his words, alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. "We've been scanned," Anna Reed called out. "A Nova patrol ship just hit us with a deep scan beam." "Have they identified us?" Miller demanded. Reed checked her readings. "I don't think so. The scan was routine, not targeted." "Nevertheless, we should move away," Miller said. "Take us out of." "Sir," Wilson interrupted. "Two Crimson destroyers just changed course. They're heading straight for us." Miller's mind raced. Their disguise hadn't worked, or had failed at the worst possible moment. "Battle stations," he ordered calmly. "All civilians to the designated shelter areas." As the alarm echoed through the ship, Miller looked again at the weapon platform. Against all odds, the old Defiant had discovered the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. Now they just had to survive long enough to do something about it. "Ready weapons," Miller said. "Let's show them what an old warship can do." Evasive maneuvers, Captain Miller ordered as the two Crimson destroyers closed in on the Defiant. Anna Reed's hands flew across the navigation controls, and the old warship lurched to the side. For a ship never designed to carry so many people, it moved surprisingly well. "They're charging weapons," reported Tom Wilson from Tactical. Miller made a quick decision. "Take us into that debris field." He pointed to a cluster of broken asteroids and scrap metal on the view screen, leftovers from the construction of the alien weapon platform. The Defiant dove into the field with the enemy ships in pursuit. Red energy beams sliced through space around them, one grazing the ship's rear shields. "Shields at 60%, called out engineer Susan Reed from her station. In the medical bay, Dr. Alan Grant braced himself against a wall as the ship shook. Around him, frightened civilians huddled together. They had been on the Defiant for 3 days now, refugees from Outpost Horizon with nowhere to go. The ship rocked again as another blast hit them. "Shields at 40%, Susan reported. "We can't take much more of this." Miller studied the tactical display. The debris field offered some cover, but the Crimson ships were still gaining. Then he noticed something. "There," he said, pointing to a massive piece of twisted metal. "That looks like part of a Nova bioship. Lieutenant Reed, position us behind it." Reed guided the Defiant behind the huge piece of organic-looking debris. The hull of Nova ships was known to block Crimson scanners. "Power down all non-essential systems," Miller ordered. "Make us look dead." The bridge lights dimmed as Susan cut power. The civilians throughout the ship fell silent as word spread of what they were doing. On the view screen, they watched as the two Crimson destroyers entered the debris field, searching for them. Minutes passed. One destroyer came so close they could see details of its red hull through the viewport, but it moved on, unable to detect them. After 20 tense minutes, Wilson reported, "They're leaving, sir, returning to the platform." A collective sigh of relief echoed through the bridge. "Good work, everyone," Miller said. "But we're not safe yet. We need to get this information back to Earth." "Sir," Wilson said, "I've been thinking about that. Our long-range communications are destroyed, but what if we use the enemy's own communication system?" Miller raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "I've been studying the data we collected. Both alien factions have set up relay beacons around the sector to coordinate their efforts. If we could hack into one, we could send a message through their own network," Miller finished. "Can you do it?" Wilson hesitated. "Not alone. I'd need help from Peter Black in communications." Make it happen, Miller ordered. While Wilson and Black worked on the communication problem, Miller called a meeting with his senior officers in the small conference room. "We can't just run and hide," he told them. "Earth needs to know about this weapon platform, but they also need time to prepare a defense. We have to slow down the alien construction." "How?" asked Commander Roberts. "We're one ship against two fleets." "By becoming ghosts," Miller answered with a slight smile. "Susan, how quickly can you restore power?" 4 hours, Captain." "Good. Dr. Grant, I understand you've been studying the Nova biological weapons we encountered at Outpost Horizon." The ship's medical officer nodded. "Yes, sir. Their weapons use a biological agent that attacks metal. That's why they're so effective against our ships." "Could you develop a countermeasure?" Grant thought for a moment. "Possibly. I've been analyzing samples from the attack. If I could synthesize an antibody of sorts." "Do it," Miller said. He turned to weapons specialist Maria Jones, a young officer who had been quiet until now. "Jones, our weapons are old, but that doesn't mean they're useless. Can you find a way to exploit weaknesses in Crimson shielding?" Jones sat up straighter. "Their new shields operate on a frequency rotation. Our old phasers are fixed frequency, so they're not very effective. But if I could modify them to rapidly change frequencies." "Make it happen," Miller ordered. "We're going to hit them where they least expect it, then disappear before they know what happened." Over the next 2 days, the crew of the Defiant worked tirelessly. Grant created his countermeasure against Nova's biological weapons. Jones modified the ship's outdated cannons. Susan fine-tuned the engines for quick bursts of speed and power. And Wilson and Black found a way to tap into the alien communication network. Then they struck. Their first target was a small Nova supply ship carrying biological components to the platform. The Defiant appeared seemingly from nowhere, fired its modified weapons, and disappeared again before reinforcements arrived. 3 hours later, they hit a Crimson fuel depot, stealing enough fuel to keep their own ship running for weeks. "They won't know what hit them," Miller said as they slipped away again, using Susan's modified power signature to blend with background radiation. Over the next week, the Defiant struck 5 more targets. Each time, they appeared suddenly, caused damage or stole supplies, and vanished. They never stayed in one place for more than a few minutes. The alien forces began to grow nervous. They increased patrols, but the human ship was like a ghost, impossible to catch. They called it the Phantom Raider in their communications, which Wilson and Black monitored constantly. Most importantly, the attacks slowed construction on the weapon platform. "It's working," Wilson reported after their 6th successful raid. "I'm picking up communications between Crimson and Nova commanders. They're blaming each other for security failures." Miller nodded in satisfaction. Seeds of distrust. Good. What no one expected was the effect their actions would have on the human refugees hidden throughout alien-controlled space. As word spread through Wilson and Black's tapped communications, stories of the ghost ship that defied 2 powerful alien fleets gave hope to countless humans in hiding. On one raid of a small Crimson outpost, they received a surprise. "Captain," called Wilson from Tactical, "I'm picking up a transmission on an old human emergency frequency." "Put it through," Miller ordered. A scratchy voice came over the speakers. "Defiant, this is Settlement Echo. We heard you were out there. 37 of us are hiding on the moon of Proxima B. Crimson patrols are getting closer. Can you help us?" Miller looked at his crew. They were already stretched thin with the refugees from Outpost Horizon. But he couldn't leave humans behind. "Set course for Proxima B," he ordered. "We'll get them out." Over the next month, the legend of the ghost ship grew. The Defiant rescued 3 more human settlements, adding to their already crowded ship. They struck at alien targets 17 more times, each hit further driving a wedge between the Crimson and Nova forces. In the medical bay, Dr. Grant treated the newcomers and continued refining his countermeasures. In the engine room, Susan kept the old ship running despite the strain. On the bridge, Miller planned their next move. "Sir," Wilson called one day, "I'm detecting unusual communication traffic between the alien commanders. The Nova forces are accusing the Crimson of sabotaging a biological weapon shipment." Miller smiled. "And the Crimson?" "They're denying it, sir, but they're also increasing security around their own facilities, as if they don't trust their allies." "The alliance is fracturing," Miller said. "Exactly as we hoped." As he looked around the bridge at his tired but determined crew, Miller felt a surge of pride. His old ship, once destined for the scrapyard, had become a legend, a phantom that struck fear into the hearts of humanity's enemies and brought hope to those in need. And soon, they would strike their most daring blow. 2 months had passed since the Defiant began its campaign against the alien forces. The old warship had become home to over 300 refugees from various human settlements. Every corridor and storage room had been converted into living space. Despite the cramped conditions, morale was surprisingly high. Captain Miller walked through the ship, nodding to civilians and crew members alike. Children who had once been terrified now waved to him with smiles. They called him Ghost Captain, a name he pretended to dislike but secretly enjoyed. He reached the cargo bay, which had been turned into a makeshift gathering area. Commander Roberts was organizing the group for a mission. "Are they ready?" Miller asked. Roberts nodded. "As ready as they'll ever be, sir." Miller addressed the group. "You all volunteered for this mission, and I thank you. Your job is to gather intelligence from the Crimson Supply Depot. Get in, download their data, and get out. No heroics." A young man at the front raised his hand. "Captain, what if we find other humans there? The rumors say Crimson is using human prisoners as workers." Miller had heard the same rumors. "If you can help them without endangering the mission, do so. But remember, the information you're gathering could save millions of lives." After the meeting, Miller headed to the bridge. There, Lieutenant Wilson was monitoring alien communications. "Any news?" Miller asked. "Yes, sir, and it's strange." Wilson adjusted his headset. "We're picking up emergency transmissions from a Nova science vessel. They're under attack. By Crimson forces." "No, sir. That's the odd part. They're being attacked by other Nova ships." Miller leaned over to look at Wilson's screen. "Civil War. Looks that way. Ever since our raids, the Nova have been fighting among themselves. Some factions want to break the alliance with Crimson. Others want to strengthen it." A slow smile spread across Miller's face. Their plan was working even better than expected. The alien alliance was crumbling from within. "Sir," Wilson suddenly called out. "A small ship just broke away from the Nova vessel. It's heading straight for us." "Raise shields," Miller ordered. "Weapons ready." The bridge crew rushed to battle stations as the small alien craft approached. "It's hailing us," reported Communications Officer Peter Black. "On an old human frequency." Miller hesitated. "This could be a trap. Put it through, but be ready for anything." A scratchy voice came through the speakers. The words were in broken human English. "Defiant ship. Help. We escape. Have information." Miller made a quick decision. Direct them to Docking Bay 3. Security team to meet them. 20 minutes later, Miller stood in the docking bay as the alien craft landed. It was a small Nova shuttle, its organic hull pulsing with a sickly light. The door opened, revealing 3 figures. They weren't human. They were Nova, tall, thin beings with pale skin that seemed to glow slightly from within. But they didn't attack. Instead, one stepped forward, hands raised in the universal gesture of peace. "I am Trell," it said in that same broken English. "We seek asylum." Dr. Grant ran a scanner over them. "They're unarmed, Captain." Miller had never expected this. Nova defectors seeking protection from a human ship. "Why come to us?" he asked. Trell's large eyes blinked slowly. "You are Ghost Ship. You fight but not kill when possible. We watch. We learn. Another Nova stepped forward. Alliance bad. Weapon bad. Will destroy all, not just humans. Miller had them taken to a secure room where they could be questioned further. Dr. Grant went with them, fascinated by the opportunity to learn more about Nova biology directly from willing subjects. Hours later, in the conference room, Miller met with his senior officers. "What did we learn?" he asked. Dr. Grant spoke first. "The Nova defectors confirmed what we suspected. The weapon platform is designed to create a wormhole to Earth. But there's more. The energy required is so massive that it will destabilize this entire region of space." "You mean it could destroy them too?" Roberts asked. "Exactly. Many Nova scientists realize this, which is why some are now rebelling." Miller turned to Wilson. "What about the Crimson? Are they aware of this risk?" Wilson shook his head. "According to Trell, the Crimson leaders know but don't care. They believe their technology can protect them from the worst effects." Engineer Susan Reed snorted in disbelief. "Impossible. Nothing could shield against that kind of spatial distortion." "Which means," Miller said slowly, "that both sides are heading toward mutual destruction, with Earth caught in the middle." The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. "We have to stop them," Miller finally said. "But first, we need to warn Earth." Peter Black spoke up. "Captain, I think I can help with that. The Nova defectors showed me how their communication relays work. I believe I can use their codes to send a message through the enemy network directly to Earth." "Do it," Miller ordered. "Tell Earth everything we know about the weapon platform and its weaknesses." Over the next day, Black worked with the Nova defectors to encode their warning message. Wilson continued monitoring enemy communications, reporting increasing conflict between the alien forces. Meanwhile, Miller planned their most daring move yet. "We need supplies and parts," he told his officers. "Susan, what's our most critical need?" "Power cells," she replied without hesitation. "We've been running on reserves for weeks. Without a recharge, we'll be dead in space in 10 days. Miller nodded. "Then we'll take them from the enemy." He pointed to a location on the star map. "This is a major Crimson supply depot. According to our intelligence, it's where they store power cells for their fleet." "That's deep in Crimson territory," Roberts warned. "Heavily guarded." "Yes," Miller agreed. "But it's become even more heavily guarded recently because they suspect their Nova allies of sabotage. They've pulled ships from other areas to protect it." Wilson understood immediately, creating a blind spot in their defenses elsewhere. "Exactly." Miller smiled. "We'll make them think we're planning to hit the depot. Meanwhile, we'll strike here." He indicated another point on the map, a smaller facility, but with enough power cells for our needs. The plan was set in motion the next day. Using the Nova defectors' codes, they sent false information through the alien communication network, suggesting an imminent attack on the main depot. As expected, the Crimson forces strengthened their defenses there, leaving the smaller facility vulnerable. The Defiant struck quickly. They were in and out in under 30 minutes, with enough power cells to keep the ship running for months. But they also gained something even more valuable, a Crimson officer taken prisoner during the confusion. Under questioning, the Crimson officer revealed the final piece of the puzzle. "The weapon will be operational in 7 days," he told them, his red-tinged skin paling with fear. "My commanders plan to betray the Nova at the last moment, seizing control of the platform for themselves." Miller called an emergency meeting of his officers. "We need to move now," he said. "Black, was your message to Earth sent successfully?" The communications officer nodded. "Yes, sir. We received confirmation that it got through." "Good. How long until Earth forces could arrive?" "At maximum speed. Their nearest fleet is 2 weeks away." "Too long," Miller said grimly. "The weapon will be active in 7 days. We need to act before then." "What do you propose, sir?" asked Roberts. Miller looked at each of his officers in turn. These people had fought alongside him for months, turning an old, outdated warship into a legend. "We're going to do what the Defiant does best," he said with determination. "We're going to appear where they least expect us, cause maximum damage, and disappear. But this time," he continued, his voice growing harder, "we're not just going to raid a supply depot. We're going to hit the weapon platform itself." The officers exchanged glances. Such a mission would be extremely dangerous, possibly suicidal. "How?" Susan Reed finally asked. Miller smiled. "By turning their own suspicions against them. We're going to trick the Crimson and Nova into attacking each other." As the meeting broke up, Miller remained alone in the conference room, studying the star charts. The plan was risky. Many things could go wrong. But the alternative was unthinkable: the destruction of Earth and possibly this entire region of space. The legend of the ghost ship was about to reach its climax. The final day arrived. For 6 days, the crew of the Defiant had worked without rest to prepare for their mission. Now the old warship hovered at the edge of sensor range from the alien weapon platform. From this distance, it looked complete. Captain Miller stood on the bridge, his face showing the strain of months of fighting and planning. Around him, his crew checked their stations one last time. "Status report," Miller ordered, his voice steady despite the tension. "Engines at full power," reported Susan Reed. Her normally neat appearance was gone. Her hair was messy, and dark circles shadowed her eyes from days without proper sleep. "Weapons modified and ready," said Maria Jones from Tactical. The young weapons specialist had proven her value many times over during their months as a ghost ship. "Medical bay prepared for casualties," Dr. Grant added from his station. The medical officer had turned the small sick bay into an efficient emergency center, though everyone hoped it wouldn't be needed. "Communications ready to broadcast on all frequencies," said Peter Black, who had worked closely with the Nova defectors to prepare their most important message yet. Miller nodded, then looked at his first officer. "Commander Roberts, are our passengers secure?" "Yes, sir. All civilians and the Nova defectors are in the designated safe areas." Miller took a deep breath. It was time. "Lieutenant Reed, take us in. Begin Phase 1. The Defiant moved slowly toward the massive weapon platform. Around it, ships from both the Crimson Empire and Nova Collective patrolled. Their uneasy alliance still held, but barely. Reports of fighting between the two factions had increased over the past week. "Enemy ships on routine patrol," Wilson reported from sensors. "They haven't spotted us yet." Thanks to the modifications Reed had made to their power signature, the Defiant appeared as nothing more than background radiation. "Position us behind the large Crimson supply ship," Miller ordered. Reed guided their ship into place. The huge Crimson vessel unknowingly shielded them from the platform sensors. "Ready, Black?" Miller asked the communications officer. "Ready, sir." "Begin transmission." Black sent the carefully crafted message they had prepared, using the codes provided by the Nova defectors. It appeared to come from Nova High Command. The message ordered all Nova ships to seize control of the weapon platform, claiming that Crimson forces were planning to betray them. "Message sent," Black confirmed. "Now we wait," Miller said. They didn't wait long. Within minutes, Nova ships began changing positions, moving to surround the platform. "The Crimson vessels are responding," Wilson reported. "They're powering weapons." "Send the second message," Miller ordered. Black transmitted again, this time using Crimson codes they had obtained from their prisoner. This message warned of a Nova betrayal and ordered immediate attack. Chaos erupted around the platform. Nova and Crimson ships, so recently allies, opened fire on each other. The space around the weapon platform lit up with energy beams and explosions. "Phase 1 complete," Miller said with grim satisfaction. "Begin Phase 2. Reed guided the Defiant out from behind a Crimson supply ship. With all attention focused on the battle, no one noticed the small human warship approaching the platform from below. "Target the first junction point," Miller ordered. Maria Jones locked weapons on the spot where Crimson and Nova technologies met on the platform's underside. This was the weakness Wilson had identified months ago. "Fire." The Defiant's modified weapons struck with precision. The energy beam, adjusted to match the frequency of both alien technologies, caused immediate damage. A section of the platform exploded outward. "Direct hit," Jones called out, moving to second target. The Defiant continued its attack run, firing at each junction point. 3 more explosions rocked the platform before the aliens noticed them. "We've been spotted," Wilson warned. 2 Crimson destroyers breaking off to pursue. "Stay on course," Miller ordered. "Hit the final junction point." Jones fired again. This time, the explosion was larger. Warning lights flashed across her console. "Sir, the platform's power core is becoming unstable. It's starting a chain reaction." Miller nodded. "As expected. Phase 3. Lieutenant Reed, get us out of here." Reed turned the ship away from the platform, pushing the engines to maximum. Behind them, the Crimson destroyers gave chase. "They're gaining," Wilson reported, "and 3 Nova ships are moving to cut us off." The Defiant shuddered as enemy fire struck their shields. "Shields at 40%. Susan Reed called out from engineering. "Captain, the power core is overheating. We can't maintain this speed." Miller had known this might happen. The old ship had been pushed beyond its limits for too long. "Options?" he asked. Susan's voice was quiet but firm. "There's one way to get more power. I can overload the core in a controlled manner. It would give us enough speed to escape. But what? It would destroy the engine room. And whoever stays to manage the overload." Miller understood immediately. "No, there must be another way." Susan shook her head. "There isn't, sir. Not in time." Before Miller could argue further, more enemy fire rocked the ship. "Shields at 20%, Wilson reported. "They'll fail with the next hit." Susan stood up. "It's the only way, Captain. Let me do this. Let me save our people." Miller looked into her eyes and saw determination there. He nodded once, his throat tight. "Do it." Susan rushed from the bridge toward engineering. Miller turned to Reed. "When she gives us the power, head for the rendezvous coordinates at maximum speed." Minutes later, Susan's voice came over the comm. "Ready, Captain. The overload is set. You'll have full power in 10 seconds." "Susan," Miller began. "It's been an honor, sir," she said. "Make sure our story is told." The ship suddenly surged forward as power flooded the engines. Behind them, the alien vessels struggled to keep pace. "We're pulling ahead," Reed reported, tears in her eyes. At that moment, the weapon platform exploded. The massive blast created a spatial distortion that spread outward, catching the pursuing alien ships. The shockwave hit the Defiant, sending it tumbling. "Stabilize," Miller ordered. Reed fought the controls. "I'm trying." The ship continued to spin, systems failing across all decks. Miller knew they couldn't survive this. "Abandon ship," he ordered. "All hands to escape pods." The bridge crew hesitated. "That's an order," Miller said firmly. "The Defiant has done her job. Now we do ours by surviving to tell Earth what happened here." As the crew moved to evacuate, Miller took one last look at his ship's view screen. The weapon platform was gone. In its place was a swirling vortex of energy that had trapped the alien fleets. Earth was safe, at least for now. Miller was the last to enter an escape pod. As it launched away from the dying ship, he watched through the small window as the Defiant, the old warship that had become a legend, broke apart. Susan's final gift had saved them all. 3 days later, Earth forces arrived to find the remnants of the alien armadas in disarray. They rescued the Defiant's escape pods, bringing Captain Miller and his crew safely home. In the years that followed, the story of the ghost ship spread throughout human space. The tactics developed by Miller and his crew became standard training in the fleet. The weaknesses Wilson had discovered in alien technology led to new weapons and defenses. And when Earth launched its newest flagship a year later, there was never any question what it would be called. As Captain Tom Wilson took command of the Defiant, He thought of Susan Reed and all those who had sacrificed to create the legend. "Ready to depart, Captain," his first officer reported. Wilson nodded. "Let's make sure the legend continues." The new ship moved away from Earth, heading out to protect humanity just as its namesake had done. The legend of the Defiant would live forever.